I just think maybe we would tighten up that beginning. I do love the idea completely. For the question of relevance, I gave you like a 5, so 50%, because you're not asking like middle-aged people to change careers, instead of something like that. Like you're mostly talking to youth and like people who are discovering themselves. So, which I'm not saying is bad, but I just wanted to point that out. That would just make the topic known a little bit faster or easier.
I would say, I kind of piggyback off what they were saying. I'm in healthcare, so I know what you're saying. It opens up a new world. I read things about science and everything, and I'm mesmerized by it. And I think your opening was awesome. I like that. Even though Percy Jackson really didn't care too much about that, he's all right though. but I kind of got lost in the end of it, towards the end. But I see where it's going. The one thing I'll say is make sure that you want your audience to really capture what you're trying to let them know. You want them to walk out of there saying, wow, this was interesting, I want to know. You want them to come up to you and say, hey, tell me more about this, or how can I do something like that? Because again, you're going to have people from different walks of life, of different jobs, and it's like kind of saying, hey, you should change your career. I do it in a heartbeat, but I kind of see where you're going. When you were talking, I was like, I know science. I'm like, I love this stuff. I'm like, it's always good. So good job on it, but yeah, I think just tighten up towards the end and just make sure you know exactly where you want your audience to be, where you want them to get out of it. If I'm saying that right.
I kind of think that, I feel like there's almost like two hooks, so kind of, as you mentioned, like the language piece, but then the second you said, like society's biggest problem, I think it was like, I think you said society's biggest problem, then went into it more, and that's when the science piece really grabbed me. So I almost feel like the beginning, I was thinking your talk was going to be about a universal language, almost, and where that was going. And then like midway through, when it was like, our biggest problem is not understanding the importance of science as in terms of communication. So I think that seemed to be the common like theme and point that you wanted to get to. So as everyone's mentioned, even that line and that kind of section, if that can be more towards the beginning, so we immediately are hooked to say, this is what you're really trying to get across, and link to that universal language. Science should be considered a language, a universal language, kind of loop those two pieces, I think will help alleviate some of the kind of, other pieces of coding, that kind of thing that might not be as directly relevant to the overall. Sorry, that was a lot, if that makes sense.
I would agree with everything that's been said, though I had a little bit of a different perspective in terms of the relevance, and actually gave you like a check plus on the relevance, because I didn't see you just trying to hook in kind of youth thinking about, okay, science could be like a good direction for me, but I think even educators, parents, anybody that can influence who has contact with youth, which is basically everybody, I thought they would see a lot of value. So I had a little bit of different perspective on that piece, and I thought the relevance was like way up there, closer to a 10.
Yeah, like I wasn't trying to just tell you like these are careers you can consider, and like we're also not trying to tell anyone to go into science or other science communication.
Yeah, I think I heard both. I definitely felt more, it was like, oh, just so you know, there are all these worlds that could open up for you if you think more about crossing fields, and I thought that was really cool. It was definitely the heavier side of things for me, and now I want to know, like, what are the implications if we don't think like this, and like, what is science and us doing, which I know you said you didn't flesh those out yet, but I definitely was like, I want to know that, like, how bad is it that we're not everyone is thinking like this, as opposed to feeling like, oh, this is a talk to like get people into careers they might not have thought of, because I know that there's more than that, but it just felt heavy on that to me.
Following what Sarah was mentioning about how you informed us of the different fields of science, I kind of want to know like why you got into that set of mind. Like, I know you talked about it a little bit, but I want to know like that exact moment that you feel like, no, I love science, but I don't want to be a doctor, I don't want to be an engineer, I know there's other things. Make it a little bit more personal, maybe like even one moment.
Just to jump on that wave, I think it was kind of like the transitions. So there was a part where you mentioned Tumblr, and I went from Greek mythology to Tumblr, but you didn't relate it to yourself and how that connection kind of goes together. What brought you from that to Tumblr to the next segment, to the next segment. So for me, it was really, I just saw the sections, and then if the transitions are smoother and it connects to each other, then I think you're gonna get that, what you're looking for.
I think in the beginning it's especially difficult because I myself don't remember like the exact moments. Like I don't know. I even said in my talk I don't know. I don't remember when, where, how I discovered science writing. And with the Greek and Tumblr, like those were like two sort of like separate paths that happened at the same time in my life. So it's like kind of hard to like structure that in a talk because it's not like one led to the other led to the other one. It was just like I happened to like learn Greek and I was also on Tumblr at the same
That
time.
was cool.
In retrospect, saying it out loud, how do you feel? Sorry, Kate. That's good.
Oh yeah. I think like it's like overall it's like kind of disappointed in the way that it was perceived because it's not how I meant it to be perceived. But like I kind of like went into it expecting that. So
Did you feel like there were two different, because you just said there were two different paths, I didn't know if that like was something that you felt when you were telling it too, or?
like with the Greek and
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've given a similar talk before, and even then I was struggling to figure out how am I going to like talk about this story and that story and another story and all these other things that make it all make sense. So
There's some of that's reflection in terms of what did you actually, what did you get out of those moments, even though they're not related and there's not this linkage necessarily in the Percy Jackson story, the Tumblr story. I wonder what you might discover that helped you on your way beyond I thought the puzzle solving reinforcement, I felt a little different than some of the voices that I heard. Maybe I felt like it was too much of the talk. The three examples of the puzzles and learning language, I sort of got it after the second one. I don't think I needed the third one. But I think that there may be some reflection, maybe some deeper reflection, because you said you've given this talk before, you found disconnects and wanting to find what's the meaning, what's the purpose point in how you share that story. So I think it's there. Also, who was around you when you were doing that? So maybe it's not something you recall, but maybe a friend that you had at that time, or someone that might have been in your life, or maybe did you keep a journal? What can you go back to try and discover if there's something purposeful for you to share in those stories? Because I think the setup is long for me. I would also say I love this topic. I think it is a very singular voice. Which is what's so remarkable. And you want an example of singularity? This is a very singular talk. Because you just don't hear, especially someone that's STEM focused, bring alternative views to entry points and integration of humanities and language and science. The only piece that's missing for me is I do love scientific illustration and medical illustration, and because I have a bias there, I'm going to hear you talk about that intersection of science and art, and science and illustration, and science and visualization. So those elements. But I like the singularity of this talk, really strong.
I know, Jana, you had
Just to
some.
add on to that, I really loved like hearing like a lot of the different pieces really like struck me. I just think that there was like maybe like one too many threads going on, and so I think, a few things like really stood out to me. So the first, when you started talking about how science writing is so important because it unites both science but also like so much of the humanities and your love of language, that kind of made me think of something my mom always says, that creativity happens at the intersection of different fields. And I feel like that was kind of one thread that came through across your talk, and maybe could help you tie together your love of language and like learning about like Greek, and then you were saying coding, and maybe how that relates to science writing and your discovery process there. I also think one thing that could be really interesting for you to explore is what like science and us has kind of like taught you, and like the lessons you've learned throughout that discovery process, because I think that in and of itself could have been like a whole like even 20-minute speech. So I feel like that could definitely like be somewhere you could take it. But yeah, so I really loved it. I just wish that you had like time to spend time on everything. But I think that if you wanted to, you could definitely do something around the intersectionality of different job fields, which I think could relate to both like your story and your discovery process, and your kind of shock that the school system wasn't really helping you see the intersection between science and the humanities. And adding on to Tim, like how he said, why is that so important? What are the dangers when we don't see the intersection?
Kate, did you? Yeah, honestly, Jana just took the words right out of her mouth and said everything I was going to. But yeah, just that common thread of I thought where you really captured me was when you started talking about Greek and then Tumblr and coding, and then you went on to talk about science writing, and I was sitting here thinking, okay, well if these are all just like new languages that open up your world, if you're going from Greek to Tumblr and it's just this interest of like this common thread of language, then like that doesn't seem so intimidating anymore. So that's really how I perceived it, and I think like if you're going towards the science part of it, making it more of like, you know, anyone can do this if you look at it as like opening up your world through a different language. And one final comment from Lou? Yeah.
I would say I feel like you've given a lot of feedback, but I don't want you to feel discouraged. I feel like you're like 85, 87% of the way exactly where you want to be. Overall though, it's a great talk. I learned a lot. Science writing, 2 words separate, obviously I know what they mean, but together it's like, again, world opening. So, it's dope.
Yes, let's end on that note. 1, 2, 3.
Nice.
Amazing. Thank you, Matt. We have Lex and Dustin.
So, I'll go.
You'll go? Okay, awesome. I am going to pass out. Does anyone need a new sheet? Yeah. And if anyone wants to pass back those ones, you can, or not.
Actually, I can like type this up. I can't read my own handwriting.
I know.
So I'm not
I'm
gonna
thinking
do it.
I'm on the same page.
But like I'm
okay.
like just scribbling things.
Like,
If I have an extra one, I just want one for my own
Yeah,
education.
take one.
Thank you.
I'm just I'll make this make sense tomorrow.
Any Wi-Fi?
Do we have Wi-Fi, Tim?
Yep.
I think
Yeah, guest, TVW guest, and then washing.